Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Melissa Hampton-Smith from James Cook University, and this afternoon I'm going to be talking to you about decision making here at the Great Barrier Reef. Or not. Okay, here we go. So equity and conservation matters. We have a pressing need to address biodiversity decline, and yet conservation can often entail considerable equity issues. And so what is equity actually, and why does it matter? And so when I use the word equity, what I'm talking about is giving people the means that they need to succeed and recognizing that different people have different needs. And the reason why it matters is because, first and foremost, we have a moral imperative to implement conservation that respects our innate need for fairness and also upholds human rights. But that's not actually the whole story, because equity and conservation can also promote these positive social and ecological outcomes, and can do this by, for example, encouraging compliance with new regulations and encouraging public support. And so an empirical approach to equity breaks down equity into these three different dimensions, and then it breaks down these dimensions further into different elements or criteria. And in our study, we looked at decision-making or procedure and its different elements or criteria. And then when we actually look at the Great Barrier Reef, what we see here is a really complex governance structure and quite extensive opportunities for stakeholder involvement. And yet we see really widespread dissatisfaction. So actually nearly half of stakeholders here are dissatisfied with decision making. And so this actually presents like a really ideal case study or an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper into decision making. And so we asked, how do these perceptions of fairness in decision making vary, and what is contributing to these perceptions? Which of these different criteria or elements of decision making are shaping people's perceptions? And so to do this, we took a published framework of criteria of procedural equity. We drew out these really key elements that are recognised in the context of conservation. And then as part of the CSIRO CellTemp survey, we surveyed 1,799 people in 6 catchment regions. And what we found, first of all, is that there was a lot of variation in these perceptions of decision making here. But a little bit of good news, there were more people who thought that it was fair than unfair. And then secondly, we conducted a Bayesian categorical regression. And so I'm just going to walk you through this for a second. There on the y-axis, what you can see are our 6 key procedural equity criteria. Okay, so we've got things like trust, people having a voice or having a say. So all these really important elements of decision making. And on the x-axis there, what you can see is people's perceptions of fairness. And so the purple bars show that when people perceive an absence of those criteria, a lack of trust, a lack of transparency, this is the impact on their perceptions here. And so as you would expect, it has a negative impact. And the opposite is true for when people perceive the presence of these criteria. We've got trust, we've got a voice, and so on. And what these results show, first and foremost, is that top of the list, we have trust, and then correctability. This is decision, this is the right to appeal or to reverse decisions, and then we've got voice. And so these 3 criteria really are the heavy lifters here. Okay, these are really shaping people's perceptions of decision making here in the reef. And the second thing that came out of this is a negativity bias. And so this is unfortunately the bad news, which is that the absence of these criteria is having a far greater impact than their presence. And so the implication for this for governance here is that removing the source of those negative perceptions is actually potentially going to have a far greater impact than promoting source for positive perceptions. So let's not put money into new programs. Let's try to address what is the source of those negative perceptions to have a greater impact on fairness in decision making here in the Great Barrier Reef, with hopefully then positive social and ecological outcomes. Thank you very much. I'd like to acknowledge the funders, of course, my co-authors and the research respondents. Thank you.